My own mother looked the groom's family straight in the eye and smiled before saying, I was just the daughter who cleaned for a living. Nobody at the rehearsal dinner knew I owned the company responsible for cleaning dozens of the commercial buildings they walked into every day. Then the groom's mother slowly looked at me, called me by my full name, and thanked me for one of the best business presentations she had ever seen. In less than 30 seconds, the story my parents had spent 10 years telling about me completely collapsed. My name is Liora Bennett, and this is how my own family spent years trying to make me feel small before one dinner changed everything. Chapter 1: The Daughter They Stopped Seeing. The first thing I noticed when I stepped into the private dining room at the Birchwood House was how carefully everyone had been arranged. 26 guests sat around an oval table beneath warm pendant lights. Paige was near the center beside Garrett Ellsworth, her engagement ring catching every flicker of light. My parents sat close enough to control the conversation. Grandma Ruth was at the far end in her wheelchair, a pale cardigan folded neatly over her shoulders. Across from her sat Garrett's parents, Robert and Catherine Ellsworth. Before my mother called me a cleaning lady in front of all of them, my family had spent more than 10 years deciding who I was. The dinner did not create that story, it only exposed it. I grew up in Carver, Indiana, a town of about 9,400 people where everyone knew which church you attended, what your father drove, and whether your family lawn was cut by Saturday morning. Indianapolis was only about 135 miles away, but when I was growing up it felt like another country. My father, Gerald Bennett, worked for Midstate Mutual Insurance. He started there in 1993 and became a regional claims manager in 2001. He was dependable, respected, and deeply committed to avoiding any disagreement that might disturb his evening. He rarely said the cruelest thing in the room. He simply stood beside the person saying it. My mother, Diane, had once done bookkeeping for 3 small businesses in Carver. She was good with numbers. She could find a missing $12 in a ledger before anyone else knew it was gone. After I was born in late 1991, my father told her it made more sense for her to stay home. She never returned to work. She reminded us often that she had given up a career for her family. Over time, that sacrifice became something Paige and I were expected to repay. Paige was born 4 years after me. She was easier for my mother to understand. She followed instructions, chose activities that looked good in photographs, and knew how to turn every achievement into a story Diane could repeat at church. At dinner, my mother asked Paige what she had accomplished that day. She asked me when I planned to settle down. By the time I graduated from Indiana State University in May 2014 with a degree in business administration, Diane had already decided what would happen next. She paid a $1,500 deposit to hold my place in an MBA program without asking me. She told my father's coworkers. She told our relatives. She told women at church that her oldest daughter was going to graduate school. For 6 months, I worked in purchasing at a hotel in Indianapolis. The job was respectable. The salary was predictable. My mother liked telling people where I worked. I hated waking up every morning knowing the best part of my job was how easily Diane could explain it. In February 2015, I drove home with a 3-ring binder on the passenger seat. Inside were 12-month cash flow projections, equipment costs, insurance requirements, a list of potential commercial clients, and a hiring plan for the first employee I hoped to afford. I placed it on the kitchen table between my parents. I told them I wanted to start a commercial cleaning company focused on offices, medical clinics, and schools. My mother did not open the binder. She looked at me and asked whether I had spent 4 years in college so I could scrub toilets. My father kept his hands around his coffee mug. He said he had already told people at work that I was starting an MBA, and now he would have to explain why I had changed my mind. That was the moment I understood they were not evaluating whether my plan could work. They were measuring how embarrassing it would be to describe. My mother said if I chose that path, I would not receive financial help from them. Paige was 19 and away at college. She sent me a message that night saying, "Mom says you are being impulsive." She did not ask what was in the binder. Grandma Ruth did. She came to the apartment where I was staying, sat at the small table near the window, and read every page. She asked how much liability insurance would cost. She asked what percentage of estimates I expected to convert into contracts. She asked how many clients I needed before hiring someone. She asked what happened if I lost my largest account in the first year. She did not tell me I would succeed. She told me that if I had chosen this, I needed to build it like a real business, not like a rebellion. Then she gave me $1,200 from her savings and a white handkerchief embroidered with the letters RC. The money was not enough to launch a company. It was enough to make the first payment. In March 2015, I rented a worn studio apartment in Indianapolis for $625 a month. I bought a 2004 Chevrolet Express van for $3,800 using Grandma Ruth's money and a small credit union loan. The air conditioning failed before summer. My first client was a dental office on Meridian Street. The contract paid $275 a week. I arrived at 5 in the morning, cleaned 3 treatment rooms, the waiting area and 2 restrooms, then changed clothes in the van and spent the day visiting offices with printed estimates. At night, I prepared invoices and tracked every expense. During the first fiscal year, the company brought in $74,000. The profit was $13,500. Those numbers were not the same, though my mother would later talk as if every dollar of revenue had gone into my pocket. I worked 7 days a week. My right shoulder ached constantly. There were months when I chose between paying myself and buying enough supplies for the next contract. I always bought the supplies. In 2016, I hired Marisol Vega. She was 40, raising a son alone, and needed a schedule she could depend on. She arrived early, cleaned with more care than anyone I had met, and never treated the work as something beneath her. During our tightest months, I paid Marisol before I paid myself. That decision became the foundation of everything I built afterward. The people doing the work would never be treated as invisible. By August 2018, we had 31 employees. I signed a contract to service 2 office buildings, totaling 240,000 square feet. The agreement was worth $310,000 a year. I sat in my van outside the client's building and called home. Grandma Ruth was visiting my parents, so my mother put the call on speaker. I told them the value of the contract. I told them how many people we employed. I told them we would need another supervisor before October. My mother asked how many people were walking around wiping floors for me now. Before I could answer, my father said Paige had been selected for a leadership program at her internship. The conversation moved on without me. Grandma Ruth did not interrupt them. She remembered. After the call ended, I sat behind the steering wheel and looked at the first business card I had ever printed. The paper was thin, and the lettering was slightly crooked. That afternoon, I stopped calling my parents with company news. I did not announce a boundary. I did not accuse them of anything. I simply stopped offering parts of my life to people who had already decided those parts did not count. 7 years later, the small cleaning service they dismissed became a major vendor for the company owned by the family of the man Paige was planning to marry. When Paige called to tell me she was engaged to Garrett Ellsworth, I congratulated her, listened to every detail, and promised to check my schedule for the rehearsal dinner. After we hung up, I typed Ellsworth into my computer. A photograph of Catherine Ellsworth appeared on the company website. I recognized her immediately. I had sat across from her in a conference room in Columbus, and she knew exactly who I was. Chapter 2. The Woman Behind the Uniform. By September 2025, Bennett Facility Solutions no longer fit inside the version of my life my parents preferred to tell. We operated across 12 states through 3 regional teams and clusters of commercial properties that could be managed without sending people halfway across the Midwest for a single shift. At the end of August, we had 267 full-time and part-time employees. The company had brought in $16.8 million in 2024. Those numbers mattered, but not in the way my mother would have understood. They mattered because every number represented a schedule, a paycheck, a family, or a person who needed to know that showing up before sunrise to clean a hospital did not make them invisible. A week before the rehearsal dinner, I sat in the main conference room at our West Washington Street office with Marisol Vega and Amanda Reed. Quarterly reports covered the table. Staffing maps filled one screen. Quality inspection scores filled another. Marisol moved through the numbers with the same concentration she had once brought to cleaning treatment rooms at 5 in the morning. She was now our regional operations director for the Midwest. Amanda handled human resources and training. She pointed to the retention report. 87% over the last 12 months, she said. Still one of the strongest rates among the major facility service vendors in the Ellsworth portfolio. Marisol leaned back and folded her arms. 40 hours of training is helping, she said. So is clustering the schedules. People are not driving an hour for a 4-hour shift anymore. Amanda nodded. The ESL support is making a difference, too. We have 3 new supervisors who would not have applied last year. I looked at the staffing map. That was the part of the company I cared about most. We were not perfect. We still dealt with call-outs, broken equipment, demanding clients, and the occasional manager who forgot that respect was not optional. But we had built systems that gave people somewhere to go. Marisol was proof of that. 10 years earlier, she had needed a reliable schedule. Now she managed hundreds of employees across several states. After the meeting, I walked back to my office. A small glass cabinet stood near the bookshelf. Inside was the first business card I had ever printed and the old bottle I once filled with lemon peel vinegar and water, because commercial cleaner had felt expensive during the earliest months. The label was faded. The cardstock had yellowed. I kept them there because success has a way of editing its own beginning if you let it. My life outside the office was quieter than people expected. I drove a gray 2019 Honda Accord that was already paid off. I lived in a 2-bedroom condo downtown. I wore good shoes because my feet mattered more to me than designer labels. I did not hide my success. I simply did not perform it. Paige called while I was leaving the office that afternoon. "The rehearsal dinner is Saturday at the Birchwood house," she said. "Mom wants everyone there by 7. "Do you want me there?" I asked. There was a pause long enough to answer the question. "Of course I do," she said. "It is family." That was not the same answer. She continued before I could point that out. "Grandma has asked about you 3 times. She really wants both of us there." That was what changed my mind. "What time?" I asked. 7. Mom said 6:45 would be better. I smiled despite myself. Mom always thinks 15 minutes early is a personality trait. Paige laughed, but it sounded distracted. She told me Garrett was excited for the families to meet properly. She mentioned he worked in development for Ellsworth Property Group, and that his parents would drive in from Columbus. I already knew that much. What Paige did not know was that Ellsworth Property Group managed 186 commercial properties across Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky. She also did not know that one of its major service contracts was currently sitting in my procurement review folder. In March 2023, I had stood in a conference room at Ellsworth headquarters in Columbus and presented our proposal to Catherine Ellsworth and 6 members of her executive team. Catherine had not been impressed by polished language. She wanted to know why our employee turnover was lower than other vendors. She asked what happened when a client complained about quality. She asked how we trained workers whose first language was not English. She asked how we protected frontline employees when building managers expected work outside the contract. I told her I had built the company because I was tired of watching necessary people get treated like background noise. Catherine did not smile or praise the answer. She asked how much the system cost and whether we could scale it without losing quality. That was when I knew I respected her. We went through several rounds of review before Bennett Facility Solutions won the contract. I did not tell Paige any of that. A few days before the dinner, an email arrived from Evan Price in Ellsworth Procurement. The agreement was entering a 3-year renewal review. Our performance scores were strong, but no final decision had been made. Under normal circumstances, that would have been routine. The problem was that Catherine Ellsworth was about to become connected to my family through marriage. That kind of connection could create questions even when no one had done anything wrong. I did not want sympathy attached to the contract. I did not want anyone suggesting Bennett Facility Solutions had been retained because Catherine liked me at a family dinner. I wanted the data to speak. Later that evening, Paige called again while I was making tea. "Garrett said something funny today," she said. Apparently his mom once came home from a vendor meeting talking about some woman who built a facility company from nothing. I kept my voice neutral. "Did he say her name?" "No, I do not think so. He just said Catherine almost never talks about vendors after work, so it must have been someone impressive." Paige laughed and moved on to table arrangements. I stood at my kitchen counter holding the phone and understood something I had avoided naming. Paige had not known nothing. She had known I owned a commercial cleaning company. She had known I worked in Indianapolis. She had heard stories that could have led her directly to me. She had simply never been curious enough to connect them. Grandma Ruth called the next Sunday at 9 in the morning, exactly as she had for years. "How are the new accounts?" she asked. "Stable," I said. "How are your people?" "Tired but covered." "What comes next?" "Renewal review and 2 university bids." She made a small approving sound. Then she told me she had sent my mother the Indianapolis Business Journal article about Bennett Facility Solutions back in 2022. "What did she say?" I asked. "Nice publicity." That was all. Ruth let the silence sit between us. Then she said she hoped I would attend the dinner. I told her I had not decided. "I want to see my girls at one table," she said. "I do not know how many more long evenings I have in me." Her heart failure had worsened that year. She used a wheelchair for longer distances because walking left her breathless. At home, she could still move around with a walker. I agreed before she had to ask again. My mother called 2 days before the dinner. "Please wear something appropriate," she said. I told her I owned appropriate clothing. "And keep the work discussion simple," she added. "This is Paige's evening. Why would my work threaten Paige's evening?" It would not. I just do not think the Ellsworths need every detail. They are traditional people. I looked out my condo window at the lights below. "You mean you want me to describe it the way you describe it? Do not make this difficult, Liora." I ended the call without arguing. On Saturday, I opened my wallet and found Grandma Ruth's handkerchief folded behind my cards. I chose a navy blouse without a company logo, black pants and flat shoes. I was not going to prove anything. I was not going to announce revenue or contracts. I made only one decision. If someone asked me a direct question, I would answer it truthfully. At 6:52 that evening, I parked outside the Birchwood house. My parents' Buick was near the entrance. Paige's SUV sat 2 rows over. A rental car with Ohio plates was parked beneath a maple tree. I slipped Ruth's handkerchief into my pocket, locked the Honda, and walked toward the door. I had no idea my mother and sister had already decided how they planned to introduce me. Chapter 3. The Dinner They Scripted. My mother met me just inside the private dining room, wearing a plum dress, a new gold necklace, and the expression she used whenever she was inspecting something she had already decided was disappointing. She hugged me quickly, then looked down at my navy blouse, black pants, and flat shoes. "You look comfortable," she said. It was not a compliment. My father stood behind her with one hand in his pocket. Gerald Bennett had hugged Paige twice in the first 10 minutes of every family gathering I could remember. With me, he offered his hand. "Glad you made it," he said. He looked past my shoulder before I finished shaking it. Paige hurried toward me from the center of the room. She looked beautiful in a cream dress, but her shoulders were tight when she hugged me. "Garrett, this is my sister Liora," she said. "She lives in Indianapolis." That was all. Garrett Ellsworth smiled and shook my hand. "It's good to finally meet you. You too." There was no judgment in his face, only the mild confusion of someone who realized he had been given almost no information about a close relative. Grandma Ruth sat at the far end of the oval table in her wheelchair, wrapped in a pale cardigan. She looked smaller than she had 3 months earlier, but her eyes were clear. "There's my girl," she said when I bent to kiss her cheek. She closed her hand around mine and held it for a moment longer than necessary. My mother began introducing people as the Ellsworth family settled in. My Uncle Thomas had served 31 years with the Carver Fire Department. My cousin Sarah had just graduated from nursing school. Paige was a senior marketing coordinator at Linden Row Creative and had received 2 promotions. Every person came with a title, an achievement, or a story that could be displayed. My mother moved past me without introducing me at all. Robert Ellsworth noticed. "And what do you do, Liora?" he asked as the first course arrived. I opened my mouth. My mother answered first. She runs a small cleaning service in Indianapolis. Megan Ellsworth Garrett's younger sister smiled. "That sounds useful. My school would collapse in a week without the custodial staff." My mother gave a little laugh. "Well, at least it keeps Liora busy." Grandma Ruth tightened her hand around mine beneath the table. I could have corrected my mother then. I did not. It was Paige's rehearsal dinner. Garrett had been kind. Megan had meant no harm. I was not going to turn the first careless sentence into a war. The door opened several minutes later. Catherine Ellsworth entered with an apology about traffic from Columbus. She was 60 silver threaded through her dark hair and carried herself like someone accustomed to walking into rooms where people were already waiting for her decision. She greeted the Bennetts first, then moved around the table. When she reached me, she stopped. "Liora Bennett," she said. "It's very good to see you again." My mother's smile flickered. "You two have met." Catherine looked at me before answering. "Yes, we have." She left it there and took the seat across from me. Dinner continued. My mother talked about Paige's latest campaign. My father added details about her leadership award. Garrett mentioned that Catherine rarely remembered anyone from a vendor presentation after a single meeting. Catherine took a sip of water. "I remember people who build good systems," she said. Her eyes moved briefly toward me. Paige did not make the connection. Halfway through dinner, I stepped into the hallway to wash my hands. My father followed a few seconds later. "You doing all right?" he asked. "I'm fine. Your mother can be a little much when she's nervous. Do you actually believe she means well?" He looked toward the dining room. "She wants everything to go smoothly." That was not what I asked. For 1 second, he looked tired rather than defensive. "Diane has not always been fair to you." My mother called his name from inside. "Gerald, we need another bottle of red." He turned immediately. That was my father's pattern. He could identify the truth as long as acting on it was not required. When I returned, Paige was preparing to take photographs with Garrett near the fireplace. "My dress has no pockets," she said, pressing her phone into my hand. "Can you hold this?" The screen lit before I could place it beside her plate. A message preview appeared from my mother. "Please keep Leora's work vague tonight. The Ellsworths are traditional, and I don't want awkward questions." Beneath it was Paige's earlier response. "I already told Garrett she runs a small cleaning service. I'll keep it simple." I did not unlock the phone. I did not photograph the screen. I placed it exactly where Paige had been sitting and slipped my fingers into my pocket until I felt Grandma Ruth's handkerchief. My mother had not stumbled into an insult. She and Paige had planned a smaller version of me in advance. When dessert arrived, Diane tapped her spoon against her wine glass. She spoke about Paige's degree career judgment and bright future with Garrett. Then she called Paige everything a mother could hope her daughter would become. Robert glanced toward me. "And your older daughter?" My mother smiled. "Liora cleans for a living." My father shifted in his chair. "We thought it was temporary," he said. "After enough years, you stop expecting a different outcome." He did not say they had given up on me. He did not need to. No one laughed. Megan lowered her eyes. Garrett looked at Paige. Robert stopped eating. Grandma Ruth placed her fork down. Catherine looked directly at me. "Leora, what exactly do you do?" My mother waved one hand. "It's not complicated." Catherine did not look away from me. "I'd like to hear from Liora." I placed my napkin beside my plate. "I own a facility services company." Catherine nodded once. "How many states are you operating in now?" 12. "And how many employees?" 267 at the end of August. Paige turned fully toward me. My father's fork struck the edge of his plate. Catherine folded her hands. "Bennett Facility Solutions is one of the strongest performing vendors in the Ellsworth portfolio. Liora led the proposal presentation in March 2023. Her company currently services 41 of our properties across 4 states under an agreement worth $3.45 million annually." My mother's face lost color. Catherine continued calmly. "Their 12-month employee retention is 87%. Their new hires complete 40 hours of training. Those results are why I remembered her." My mother looked at me. "You never told us it was this large." "I called in August 2018 after we signed a $310,000 contract." My father frowned. "I don't remember that." Grandma Ruth's voice came from the end of the table. "I do." Everyone looked at her. "You were both in the room," she said. The call was on speaker. Diane asked how many people were walking around wiping floors for her. My mother shook her head. "Mom, you're remembering it wrong." "No," Ruth said. "I was there." My father leaned back. "We are not mind readers." "I told you," I said. "You heard me. You just did not think it was worth remembering." Robert looked at my father. "If one of my children had built something like that, I would want to know every step." My mother's eyes filled. "This was supposed to be Paige's night. You have humiliated us." I sat here and answered a question. "Everything always becomes about you," Paige said. Catherine set down her glass. "Facts are not drama." Paige stood and walked into the hallway. I followed her only because I knew if I did not, my mother would tell everyone I had attacked her in public and refused to speak privately. Paige turned toward me with tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me? When was the last time you asked me about my life?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I saw the group message. Her face changed. "I just wanted tonight to go smoothly. You made me smaller so you could look better. That's not what I meant. It is what you did." We returned to the table in silence. I stood beside my chair. "I love this family. I am not asking anyone to advertise my accomplishments. I am asking for basic truth. I will not keep sitting at tables where my parents describe me as a disappointment, so Paige can look more successful. From now on, I will attend family events only when I am treated with respect. That is not punishment. It is a boundary." My mother stared at me. "I am your mother. Then act like one." Her face tightened. "I gave up my career. I gave up everything for this family." Catherine spoke before I could answer. Then perhaps it is time to see what your daughter built with hers. You do not understand this family, my mother said. I understand enough about Liora to know what was said tonight was not true. Grandma Ruth lifted one hand. Diane, sit down. My mother sat. I crossed the room to Ruth and adjusted her cardigan around her shoulders. You don't have to stay for me, she whispered. She pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. I thanked Catherine for asking the question directly. She gave me a small nod. Thank you for answering it. Before leaving, I placed one Navy business card beside my mother's plate. Care in every detail was printed beneath the company name. I walked out without turning around. 9 miles later, I pulled into the empty parking lot of a small church, switched off the engine, and unfolded the note Grandma Ruth had placed in my hand. Chapter 4. The Cost of the Lie. The paper trembled once between my fingers before I forced my hands still. Liora, your mother inherited the fear I spent most of my life obeying. You inherited the courage I was too afraid to use. I should have protected Diane better when she was young. I should have shown her that a woman did not have to disappear to prove she loved her family. I did not do that, and some of what she carries began with me. But her pain does not give her the right to pass it into you. Do not wait for them to see you. The right people have seen you for a long time. Love, Grandma Ruth. I read it twice. Then I lowered my forehead against the steering wheel and cried. Not the controlled tears I had held behind my eyes at the restaurant. Not the quiet kind that disappear before anyone notices. I cried until my chest hurt and the church parking lot blurred beyond the windshield. Grandma Ruth had spent years asking me about contracts, payroll, and employees because she understood something my parents never did. Being seen was not the same as being praised. It meant someone cared enough to know what your life contained. My phone began vibrating before I reached Indianapolis. My mother called 7 times during the next 48 hours. The first 3 voicemails were angry. You embarrassed me in front of the Ellsworths. You could have corrected me privately. You knew exactly what you were doing. By the 4th message, her voice had changed. I am still your mother, Liora. The 6th included crying. You cannot abandon this family because of one difficult dinner. One difficult dinner. As if the previous 10 years had been appetizers no one was expected to remember. My father sent one text. Your mother is falling apart. He did not ask whether I was all right. Paige sent hers late Sunday evening. Can we talk? Not about Mom. About us. I read it and set this phone face down. Regret could arrive quickly. Change usually took longer. At 8:12 Monday morning, an email from Catherine Ellsworth appeared in my inbox. She wrote that the events at the rehearsal dinner would not affect the current agreement between our companies. Then she said that because our families were about to be connected by marriage, she had disclosed the relationship to Ellsworth Legal Counsel and would remove herself from the renewal process. Evan Price would lead the independent review. I read the email twice, then called Melissa Grant, our outside attorney. She came to the office that afternoon with a legal pad and a calm expression that always made bad news sound manageable. We preserve everything she said. Every email, every performance report, every conversation with Ellsworth Procurement. I have nothing to hide. I know. Documentation is how we prove that. She explained that I should not discuss pricing renewal terms or internal review details with Paige Garrett or anyone else in either family. Before leaving, she placed a conflict disclosure form on my desk. There is already a question circulating inside procurement about whether Catherine influenced the original contract or this renewal. My stomach tightened. From whom doesn't matter yet. What matters is how we respond. I signed the disclosure. The contract covered 41 properties. Losing it would not destroy Bennett Facility Solutions, but it would affect staffing schedules and dozens of families who had nothing to do with my rehearsal dinner. By Tuesday, Evan requested additional records, safety incidents, quality inspection scores, staffing coverage, retention, service level performance. We were not receiving favorable treatment. We were being examined more closely because of the appearance that we might. That was fair. It was also frightening. Meanwhile, Carver began doing what small towns do when a story stops making sense. Uncle Thomas searched my company name. Sarah found the Indianapolis Business Journal article from 2022. Grandma Ruth confirmed she had sent it to my mother when it was published. My mother had responded with 2 words: nice publicity. She had not been uninformed. She had dismissed the evidence before it could threaten the story she preferred. The article moved through family texts and the women's group at church. Nora Whitfield eventually asked my mother why she had always described my work as cleaning a few houses when I employed hundreds of people. Diane told her I had hidden everything. For the first time, people did not automatically accept her version. That was the only social consequence I needed. She did not lose her home or her friends. She lost exclusive ownership of the story. When I returned to the office, Marisol was waiting beside my desk with coffee. "You look terrible," she said. "Thank you." "You're welcome." I told her the shortened version of what happened. My mother had called me a cleaning lady in front of Garrett's family, then Catherine had explained who I was. Marisol listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at me for several seconds. "They used cleaning lady like it was an insult." "Yes." "Did you notice what that says about women like me?" The question stopped me. Marisol continued. "They were trying to embarrass you because they thought you were one of us. Then everyone was shocked because you were the owner." Her voice was not accusing, but I felt the truth in it. "I never thought the work was beneath me." "I know," she said. "But the story cannot become that you were too important to be a cleaning lady." I looked through the glass wall at employees moving between desks, reviewing routes and preparing supply orders. The work had possessed dignity when I cleaned the Meridian Street dental office alone. It had not become respectable when the revenue crossed $1 million. Later that week, Amanda Reed brought me an internal survey. A large number of frontline employees wanted advancement, but did not understand the path beyond their current roles. I placed the report beside my coffee. "Then we build the path." Marisol leaned forward. "What are you thinking cleaner to team lead? Team lead to supervisor." Supervisors who want scheduling and compliance training can prepare for regional coordinator roles. Amanda began taking notes. "We could build a pilot before the end of October." Marisol nodded. "I'll run it." That was the first decision I made after the dinner that felt like mine. I could not control whether my mother respected the work. I could make sure the people doing it saw a future inside the company. Paige's wedding took place the following Saturday. Garrett did not cancel it, but he asked to postpone their honeymoon and continue premarital counseling after the ceremony. Paige later told me what he had asked her the night after the rehearsal dinner. "You didn't know your sister ran Bennett Facility Solutions, or you never bothered to ask. Garrett was not disturbed because I had money. I was disturbed because Paige and Diane had coordinated a false version of me to make the family look better." I did not attend the wedding. My boundary was 6 days old. My mother had not apologized. Paige had not yet taken responsibility. Grandma Ruth understood. On the morning of the ceremony, I called Paige. "I hope you build a marriage that is more honest than the way our family has treated each other." Her voice was quiet. "I wish you were here." "I know." She did not ask me to change my mind. 2 weeks after the rehearsal dinner, Paige appeared in the lobby of my Indianapolis office without warning. She stood beneath the digital scheduling board, watching teams prepare for evening shifts at hospitals, schools, and office buildings. Marisol was leading a regional call in the conference room. Paige looked around slowly. "I thought it would be smaller," she said. "I know." Marisol joined us after the meeting. Paige recognized her name from stories I had apparently told years earlier, and she had forgotten. She listened while Marisol explained how she had moved from frontline cleaning into operations. For once, Paige did not interrupt with a story about herself. When Marisol left, Paige sat across from me. "I am sorry I believed Mom without asking you." I waited. "I am sorry I answered that group message. I am sorry I helped make your work sound small. And I am sorry it took Catherine confirming everything before I realized how wrong I was." "I believe you're sorry." Her eyes filled. "But you don't forgive me. I don't know yet what you will do differently." She looked down at her hands. "Garrett asked me something else. He asked if your company really had been small, would I still think the way we treated you was wrong?" I said nothing. "I didn't know how to answer," she whispered. "That is the part I'm most ashamed of." I did not hug her. I did not tell her everything was repaired. I asked whether she wanted coffee. She nodded. While we were standing near the break room, my phone vibrated. The email was from Evan Price. The data review was complete. The final renewal decision would be made in early November. Chapter 5. The Word They Got Wrong. Before the review meeting arrived, I made one call I had been avoiding. It had been 2 weeks since the rehearsal dinner. My mother answered on the first ring, but did not say hello. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I told her I loved her. That part was true. Love had never been the problem. Access was. I said I would not attend another family event where she and my father made me smaller so Paige could look more successful. My mother exhaled sharply. She said I was choosing pride over family. I told her I was choosing peace. She asked whether I understood how much she had sacrificed. She reminded me that she had given up work ambition and independence to raise us. Her voice shook as she described the career she might have had and the years she could not recover. For once, I did not argue with the facts of her pain. I told her I was sorry she had lost the life she wanted. I meant that too. Then I said I could not spend my own life apologizing because I had built something she had once been too afraid to build. She called me ungrateful. I looked through my office window at Marisol reviewing schedules with Amanda. My mother had always treated gratitude like obedience. I told her she had the right to grieve her choices. She did not have the right to use that grief to decide how small I was allowed to become. The line went silent. Then she ended the call. There was no apology, no sudden understanding, no promise that the next holiday would be different. I had not called to force a reconciliation. I had called to make sure the boundary existed outside my own head. The renewal decision came during the first week of November. Evan Price scheduled a video meeting with me, Melissa Grant, and 2 members of the Ellsworth Procurement Committee. Catherine was not present. That mattered. Evan explained that the review had covered attendance, completion, quality inspections, safety records, employee retention, and our response to staffing shortages. He said the committee had reviewed the conflict disclosure and found no evidence that Catherine had influenced the decision. Then he told me Bennett Facility Solutions had been approved for a 3-year renewal. The new agreement was worth $3.72 million annually because the scope had expanded and labor costs had been adjusted. I thanked him. My voice stayed steady until the call ended. Then I sat back and closed my eyes. The contract had not been rescued by Catherine. It had survived Catherine removing herself. That was the result I wanted. Our work had been examined more closely because of the family connection, and it had still held. Marisol appeared in my doorway a few minutes later. She took one look at my face. "We got it," she said. I nodded. She stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. For the first time in weeks, I let myself smile without wondering who might use it against me. By then, the leadership pathway had already started. 24 employees joined the first group. 6 began training for team lead roles. 2 entered scheduling and compliance development for future regional coordinator positions. Amanda created progress plans. Marisol led the sessions. Supervisors were required to recommend people based on performance and reliability, not who was easiest to talk to in a break room. At the end of the first training day, Marisol stood beside me near the conference room. She said this was worth more than anything that happened at the rehearsal dinner. I looked through the glass at employees comparing notes and practicing incident reporting. She was right. My revenge was never going to be making my parents lose something. It was taking the work they had used to shame me and turning it into a path other people could use to rise. Paige and Garrett had married on September 27th. They postponed their honeymoon and continued counseling after the ceremony. For the next 3 months, Paige called me regularly. She did not ask me to defend her during arguments with our mother. She did not demand that I forgive her because we were sisters. She asked about Marisol. She asked how the training program worked. She asked what I worried about as a business owner. For the first time in years, she asked questions without waiting for a chance to talk about herself. I answered some of them. Not all. Trust did not return because someone finally knocked on the door. It returned, if it returned at all, because they kept showing up after the door did not open immediately. My father stayed silent for almost 3 months. In early December, a message from him appeared while I was reviewing payroll. He said he should have spoken at the rehearsal dinner. Then he added that he should have spoken years earlier. I read the message twice. I did not delete it. I did not answer. Acknowledgement was a beginning. It was not repair. Back in Carver, people had started searching my name on their own. My mother still told some of them that I had always been private. Sometimes she said I had deliberately hidden my success. Sometimes she said I had become proud. The difference was that people no longer accepted her version automatically. She did not lose her house, her marriage, or her place at church. She lost the ability to define me without anyone checking. That was enough. After the renewal was finalized, Catherine invited me to dinner in Columbus. We did not discuss Paige for most of the evening. We talked about leadership labor and the strange cost women sometimes pay when they build lives their families do not understand. She did not offer me another contract. She did not need to. Respect did not always have to arrive carrying a reward. Grandma Ruth kept calling every Sunday at 9. Her voice grew weaker as winter approached, but her mind remained sharp. She still asked about clients, employees, and what came next. When I told her about the leadership pathway, she was quiet for a moment. Then she told me to build a company that saw people before the world decided they were invisible. I placed her letter in the glass cabinet beside the first business card and the old bottle of lemon and vinegar cleaner. The handkerchief embroidered with RC stayed in my wallet. One morning in December, I arrived at the office at 7:15. Marisol was preparing the regional meeting. Amanda was helping a new supervisor find the correct training file. Teams were checking routes for hospitals, schools, office buildings, and government facilities. The building was already moving. I stopped in front of the glass cabinet. For a second, I remembered the Meridian Street dental office, the van with broken air conditioning, the ache in my shoulder, my mother asking whether I had gone to college just to clean toilets. She had been right about the verb. I clean. We clean hospitals, schools, offices, and the places where other people build their lives. What she got wrong was the word just. There is no just in honest work. There is no love in asking someone to become smaller, so another person can keep feeling superior. My victory was not $16.8 million in revenue. It was not the $3.72 million renewal. It was not the fact that people in Carver finally knew my mother had been wrong. My victory was that I had stopped waiting for my family to give me permission to exist at my full size. Marisol opened the conference room door. The morning meeting was starting. I walked inside and joined the people who had known who I was long before my family was ready to see it. If I had never built a multi-million-dollar company and still cleaned offices by myself, would my family have had any right to treat me that way? And after seeing the group message, would you give Paige a second chance, or was her apology already too late? Share what you would have done and stay with the channel for more stories about betrayal boundaries and the kind of justice that does not need revenge to be powerful.